After the Thunder traded away Paul George for a host of picks and a future All-Star in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, plus a very good player in Danilo Gallinari, we knew the Thunder had done well for themselves. I'm pretty sure most of us thought they had got the better half of the deal. Because of the desperation of the Clippers to get Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, the Thunder had really benefited from that, but we didn't know it would turn out to be one of the biggest robberies of all time. Sam Presti with his best Ocean's 11 impersonation. Paul George deal in itself has set this franchise up for the foreseeable future. I just don't think people understand they got a record amount of picks, yes, but they also got one of the best guards in the league that doesn't get talked about enough. If the Clippers came to me this year with a proposition of a straight swap of SGA for PG, I would say yes if I'm OKC. And then why not add in 6 first-round picks? But even after gathering an all-time record number of picks and pulling off one of the biggest finesses in NBA history, just the history of life really, the Thunder weren't expected to be very good this year, with most expecting them to finish towards the bottom of the Western Conference after not only trading Paul George but also franchise player Russell Westbrook for CP3, who was supposedly washed even though he averaged around 17 and 8 over the course of his 2 seasons in Houston and was coming off a 60-game season. But regardless, they brought in CP3 and expectations were very low for a team full of young players and an aging star. Quickly before I get into the video, if you could drop a like right now, if you could subscribe to the channel, trying to hit 10k by the end of the year, that would be much appreciated. It does take quite a lot of time to make these videos, and dropping a like really changes how the video does, so that would help me out a lot. Thank you very much. Now, one thing that we don't know about OKC is the coaching situation. People have mixed opinions on Donovan as a coach, but I think he did a pretty good job, and in particular this year, but I don't think he is some master coach that just can't be replaced. He's a good coach that you would be happy to have, but I don't expect him to leave a huge hole in the organization like some may think. In terms of a potential replacement, I do like the idea of Kenny Atkinson, who is at the very least proven he can turn a franchise around, and he was a part of doing so in Brooklyn, turning them from a bottom feeder to a playoff team and getting the best out of the likes of D'Angelo Russell and Spencer Dinwiddie, which the Thunder would be hoping he could do the likes of for SGA, Darius Basley, and those guys. And speaking of SGA and Darius Basley, the first place we have to start when talking about OKC's roster is the core of the roster, and that incredibly young core with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander due to head into his 3rd year, and Basley and Dort both heading into their 2nd years. There are obviously a few more interesting players on the roster, but these are the 3 players that I think hold the most potential and promise currently going into next year and beyond. And we have to start with SGA. He showed a lot of promise in LA and a lot of promise against the Warriors in the first round of the playoffs, but has since grown into one of the best young guards in the league, a versatility on offense and defense, with the ability to play off-ball, playing in 3 guard lineups at times, and the ability to play on-ball as a capable creator, recording 6 assists on 3 different occasions against the Rockets in the first round of the playoffs. Now, sometimes Shai does play too calmly. It seems as though he is in an attack mode at all times. That could be a result of playing with Chris Paul, not trying to overdo things, but this does result in a few games, and we saw this against Houston, that there was some inconsistency in his game, which is to be expected, but also the calmness at which he plays the game does help. He has an incredible change of pace and his ability to score at the rim as he picks his time when to separate from the defender and when to get to the rim. He can score from the mid-range and from beyond the arc, but as someone who's going to be expected to lead the team in scoring next year, there's going to be a bit more asked of him to be a bit more aggressive every single night. He can't take any nights off without Chris Paul there to take the scoring load and take the pressure off him. It's going to be him and only him a lot of the time, and he's going to need to take a bigger responsibility on that end of the floor. But Shai is a special talent overall. 6'6", can score at all 3 levels, has shown flashes of being able to play make, has potential to guard multiple positions going forward, and can currently guard guards well, and has proven to be a 2-way player since he started. With added responsibility, I don't think it's crazy to expect big things from him next year. Maybe his scoring doesn't go up a lot, because I think around 20 to 22 points per game is around his mark at the moment, but I could see him averaging around 5 assists per game given the touches and given that increased role in the passing game, which I think he has the potential to thrive in. In terms of Darius Basley, he's a wild card. He showed flashes in his time during the regular season, but after having some time to build up his body and to have effectively a 2nd preseason, he performed fantastically during the seeding games, scoring over 20 points in 3 consecutive games as he got more minutes and showed versatility on both offense and defense. Now, I'm not going to dedicate too long to talking about Danilo Gallinari because more than likely he's going to sign with a different team in free agency, but what that does do is it increases the playing time for Basley going forward, and he could potentially average over 20 minutes a game from the jump next season, and that's exciting for Thunder fans. He's going to have his ups and downs. He's not exactly a consistent player or consistent scorer yet, but if you can score 20 points in 3 consecutive games against any kind of NBA level competition, and then compete on the defensive ends and make the occasional timely basket in the playoffs against a good Rockets team, it bodes well for what he can do going forward, and I think there is a lot to like about his game. Able to step up and hit the three, showed flashes of getting to the rim, and was also pretty impressive defensively with his switch ability and his tenacity. And then obviously the main man himself, Lou Dort. We saw what we're going to get from him going forward. Absolute lockdown defense that could turn into a very mean defensive backcourt going forward with him and Shai. Now there are question marks over his offense, but Game 7 of the finals, he showed the potential he has as someone who can at the very least knock down open threes. And then he started venturing out into attacking defenders off the dribble and using his size to finish at the rim, which is going to be crucial for him going forward. Built like a linebacker with his speed, he's not going to be easy to stop getting to the rim. Now, just a side note, for Sam Presti pulled a Chicago Bulls, Scottie Pippen type deal on Lou Dort. Now, I'm not one to feel sorry for NBA players' contract situations, but $5.4 million over 4 years is rough. I'd be shocked if he doesn't prove to be worth at least $5 million a year by next year. He's probably already proven that now with his defense alone, and then if his offense comes along, yeah, look, he isn't going to be struggling for money, and I don't pity him, but that could look like one of the craziest contracts in the NBA over the next few years if Dort turns into the all-defensive player he can be. But as much as I like some of these young guys on the Thunder, and as many picks as they have going forward, I don't think OKC have to completely bottom out to complete this rebuild. They will still have some solid vets in Schroeder and Adams signed on, with Schroeder probably still likely to come off the bench, as I see that being his best role going forward, and Adams being a key part of the offense this year, through his passing at the elbow and his usual solid scoring, rebounding and defense. At this point in these guys' careers, I think you can trust what you are going to get out of them. They aren't stars and never will be, but they help your team win, and Schroeder in particular had an incredible year, which if he can replicate, the Thunder could have a decent season even as a young team. Now we've got to talk about the Chris Paul deal because this will determine a lot of things going forward. It's established CP3 is leaving. He effectively said goodbye. We still don't know where he's going to go. There's going to be several teams interested, with the Bucks and Knicks popping up in quite frequent conversation. Now I do like the idea of DiVincenzo and some cap fillers coming in from Milwaukee. DiVincenzo does everything you want from a role player: energy, ability to shoot, get to the rim, play defense, and has potential to be a playmaker as maybe the second or third ball handler on a team going forward. Has already played in playoff environment and done well, scoring in double digits in the last 3 games of the series against the Heat. But then you have the Knicks, who are apparently interested, which blows my mind, but it's the Knicks, so it doesn't really blow my mind. It's not surprising in the slightest, but they're reportedly interested in giving up Kevin Knox and potentially some cap fillers and maybe a first round pick going forward, something like that. I don't know. Personally, I'd prefer DiVincenzo over Knox. Clearly, he's a better player. He's shown more. There's nothing to suggest Knox is going to be anything more than out of the league in a couple of years, unfortunately. He could be great, but yeah, 37% from the field this year, I think, maybe 34. Yeah, he wasn't great, and DiVincenzo's already proven himself to be at the very least a very good role player going forward, and a two-way one at that. So he's the one I'd be looking to get. Now, I don't think OKC is going to make the playoffs this year unless they do something ridiculous, like, I don't know, keep Chris Paul, something like that. But I also don't think they're going to be absolutely terrible. I trust Sam Presti to make the right acquisition at head coach. Shai could take another step, as could Dort and Basley, and then a couple of solid vets in Adams and Schroeder. Plus you have whatever is coming your way in the Chris Paul deal. Maybe it's a guy like DiVincenzo or a Knox or even a Kendrick Nunn if the Heat are interested. Young players who are capable of coming in and making an impact, with DiVincenzo probably being my favorite of those potential options like I've mentioned. In terms of potential drafting this year, the Thunder are in a situation where I think they just take the most talented players players available, or maybe they look towards a wing because they already have a couple of promising guards, and this could also depend on what comes in the trade, but a guy like a Saddiq Bey, who is a pretty switchable defender and a great shooter, which I think they might need at the moment, because they have Dort and Shai, who might not turn into the greatest three-point shooters based off what we've seen, so bringing in a guy like Bey who can defend and can shoot could help space the floor. You also have a Desmond Bane who does a lot of the same and might make up for that lack of shooting in the backcourt that OKC currently have. But I just wouldn't be surprised to see them take a guard, anyone they believe is the most talented player available. Regardless of what happens, the Thunder have their future set. If they win 12 games, if they win 60, it's much the same. Well, if they win 60, that's a bit of an exaggeration. If they win 12 games, if they win 35, you know what I mean, their future's set. Now, I expect them to be competitive, but be a fair bit off the playoffs, unless they bring in some more veteran presences or keep Chris Paul, like I've mentioned, and get huge jumps that even I don't expect. I expect their young players to take jumps, but not jumps that would see them stay in the playoff picture. Losing their best player, Danilo Gallinari, and an established coach, they'd need to jump a lot to stay in the playoff picture with all of that happening. But anyways, this team has so much young talent already and has a stack of draft picks. I'd be shocked if OKC aren't in serious contention within the next few years, seeing as what they have in the vault and what they already have. If you did enjoy the video, a like would be greatly appreciated. Sub to the channel, trying to make this content like 5 to 6 times a week. This is probably my second upload at the time of watching, so for a double upload, smash the like button. It really helps out, as I've said. Also subscribe to the channel if you've made it to the end of the video and you haven't done that. What are you doing? Anyways, have a good day. Catch you next time.